It is my pleasure to welcome Courtney Cannon. She is the Undergraduate Enrollment and Youth Programs Marketing Strategist for Gallaudet University to the HigherEd Marketer podcast. How are you doing this afternoon, Courtney?
Thank you for having me here. I'm doing great. Happy October.
Well, we appreciate you being a part of our show. To get things started, I would love to let everyone know how we became friends and how we came up for the topic of the podcast. Courtney reached out when we had our last webinar and wanted to know if we could have captioning. And it was the first time that we've had that question, and Bart did everything he could to make sure that we had it. And in the follow-up conversations, and as Courtney expressed her appreciation, it became very apparent that that's something that a lot of webinars don't have. And we wanted to go into the conversation of inclusiveness in marketing. So Bart, would love for you to, from your perspective, kind of go into how we further connected with Courtney.
Yes, thank you, Troy. This has been a great a conversation that we've started. We did a pre-interview conversation with Courtney a couple weeks ago. And one of the things that I wanted to talk with Courtney about especially was just the idea of, being more sensitive and inclusive in the way that we do our marketing. And even in our brief conversation earlier, I learned a lot about the importance of, even in Zoom, leveraging kind of a plain background to make it easier for Courtney to be able to read my lips and being able to do those types of things. And so I thought it would be great to just understand a little bit more from Courtney's point of view about inclusive marketing. And so, Courtney, I'm curious, your experience not only of being able to receive that inclusiveness, but also as a marketer, how do you try to be more inclusive in the marketing that you're doing?
That's a great question. I think it's important to include everyone when you try to market something, because, for example, I wanted to learn more about how education marketing. I saw a webinar that I wanted last week that I wanted to join and learn more. So I emailed them, like there was a teacher to ask if they would be captured available. They emailed me back and said they would try. But I went to the registration page to sign up for the webinar. And I saw at the very bottom that it will be captured. But if I saw that in the first place, in the marketing post plan, whenever how my show, what to have, that I would have to navigate through all that to try to figure out if it would be accommodated. I think people are people. They don't have time to try to figure out if we will happen or not. So it's important to show that you will have it to be inclusive.
That's great. I like the idea that it's a little bit on the part of the marketer to make sure that they can show that they are inclusive. I like the idea that you said that, showing that somewhere in it, not as a postscript or an asterisk at the bottom of the page, but something to say, this is a higher ed marketing webinar for everyone, we are going to be including captioning for those who will need that, and then tell about the story. I love that idea because I think that's a very small thing that could be done to really make it more inclusive for a lot of other folks. What are some of the things that you do at Gallaudet that help people feel more inclusive, whether it be from the deaf students that you serve or even from other areas throughout the university marketing?
Gallaudet University student population much need deaf therapy, technically he students too. Those he students study to become an language interpreter who are deaf, some teachers with the deaf or captioning. So in our marketing effort, we have video and sign language, but English caption. Like two reasons we are bilingual university, so we make sure we keep that sign language and English caption visible for all involved. Also, with the gap planned, we try to make sure our video, picture, letter, PowerPoint are accommodated to the gap planned. We have a contact at Gallaudet that works with the gap planned. So we go to her for educating us how to best serve the gap planned. For example, the social media post, if they have a picture or a video, we make sure that it's written below to accommodate the gap plan for the cleaning. So video, picture, everything written out to captioning her. If that makes sense.
Yes, that does actually. That's very good. And I have read a lot of statistics lately that even videos that are utilized on LinkedIn for those who can hear, they're still wanting captions because sometimes it's not appropriate to have the audio on. And so I think that captioning not only can be more of an inclusive way to do marketing, but it's becoming a marketing technique that really needs to be done everywhere.
I agree, but it's important to know the right way to capture. You want to make sure that the capture should be below the piece and not cover the piece because the depth cluster values this to this expression. And that's a huge part of the sign language depth cluster. So I'm making sure that the colors of the captioning, you're able to see it. But in lecture video sometimes has the caption covering the hand. So you can't see the sound but the caption. So we just have to make sure that the caption are perfect.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. Troy?
Also in the earlier conversation, Courtney, you expressed the importance that within the deaf community that there is a bilingual, being bilingual. And I had not heard or understood the concept until you explained it, that it's important for one to not only be able to read lips, but also be able to sign. But it's also surprising that there are a lot of deaf people who aren't proficient at one or the other, and wanted to know if you could kind of explain the concept and the importance of bilingual proficiency within the deaf community.
I wanted to clear about something. Bilingual means sign language in English, not reading that. So sign language is the primary communication in the deaf community that they use to communicate, learn, interact, and be social with the deaf community. English is important to know because in the real world, everything is in English. Application, paperwork, or people doing the job, emails, backup, all that is in English. But that's important to the deaf community because sign language has its own grammar, has its own structure. It's like Spanish, they have their own grammar, their own structure. Same thing with sign language. So it's important for them to have both structure, writing, the reading, and the real world, and the sign language for the deaf community to be part of that culture.
Great. Thank you. That's very helpful to understand that better, and we really appreciate that. What would you say as far as how can traditional higher ed, I mean, certainly Gallaudet serves a very specific community. How can the rest of higher ed, because if I recall correctly, the college you attended was not Gallaudet. It was, I think it was Villanova. And, there were ways that you needed to be able to be accommodated, not only through the inclusiveness in the marketing, but also just the inclusiveness on campus. So as higher ed marketers, what can we do to better serve our audiences to be more inclusive?
That's a great question. That's a great question. University colleges have different in their own aspects, but overall, maybe so. The differences in the population that is through video, through picture, maybe interviews with different members of the college community. I think that really is important to hear from someone at that college, from a specific population, maybe a blind person. Hear this story, how the college supported them. Someone in the winter, how they get around the teachers, hear from them. That's what we do at Gallaudet University. We try to do a live storytelling because there's so many different depth backgrounds. Some are hurricane, don't know how to sing. Some are deaf, and they only language to sign language. They don't know how to read that. And then we have some in between. So we try to use a live storytelling from each of the spectrum.
That's great. Thank you. And that's just a reminder too, that Troy, I'm thinking about is the storytelling is such a big part of this. And I love the fact that Courtney has talked, encouraged us to do more storytelling through various means, whether it's video, pictures, other things that can be leveraged. But that reminds me of the conversation we had with Jim Small a couple of weeks ago from Notre Dame University, that he talked about the importance of storytelling. So if you haven't heard that episode, be sure to go back and listen to that as well.
Thank you, Bart. Courtney, as we bring it to a close, would like to know if there are any other aspects of inclusive marketing that marketers should keep in mind as they are preparing their marketing communication.
How much more time do we have?
As long as you need.
I think maybe the most effective way is to try to put yourself in their shoes and see how it would be to receive that information. Maybe like a blind person, how would they receive the information, how to market to them, like the different disability, different background. Maybe try to put yourself in the shoe, have the capacity to figure out the best strategy, and also maybe have a conversation with a person from that community. Like the same either with me, you have a conversation with me to learn more, better understand the community and how to reach them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you being a guest on the Higher Ed Marketer podcast. Bart.
Thanks for having me. It's a honor to be here.
It is our pleasure. Bart, do you have any parting words?
Yeah, a couple of things that I wanted to point out. And I know that that Courtney just kind of made a very good case for empathetic marketing. We talk about, some of the best marketing is always going to be from a standpoint of being empathetic to our audience. And whether that is what Courtney kind of pointed out is getting in the shoes of different communities, whether they are, deaf community, whether it's a blind community, whether it's a disability community, or even if it's other communities like first generation college students or students of Latino and background where maybe their parents don't speak English, but they speak Spanish. really understanding how can we best accommodate, how can we best communicate, and how can we best market to these different audiences with these different ways. I mean, we're not all the same, and that's what makes the diversity of a university community so exciting, is that we're not the same. And I think as marketers, it's our responsibility to understand that, to be empathetic, and then make sure that we do things that are not creating friction for those people who need it. So like Courtney said at the beginning, if we're going to make a webinar captions available, let's put that up front so that she's not wasting an hour of her time trying to figure that out. And so I think that just, again, it goes back to empathy. It goes back to understanding and being willing to learn about everybody else. And I think that's really the key. And Courtney, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
No problem.
Courtney, we hope you don't mind if you have had fans that have been developed during this podcast, if we share your contact information. Maybe can people reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, that's fine. No problem.
Very good. Well, again, that brings us to the end of another episode. The Higher Ed Marketer podcast is sponsored by Kaler Solutions, a creative and strategy higher ed agency in Indianapolis, Indiana, and by Think Patented, a marketing execution company that is located in Dayton, Ohio. On behalf of Bart Kaler and myself, Troy Singer, thank you very much for joining us today.
You've been listening to The Higher Ed Marketer. To ensure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you're listening with Apple Podcasts, we'd love for you to leave a quick rating of the show. Simply tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. Until next time.